The Rise of China, Episode 4. In 2014, Xi Jinping told a gathering of Eurasian leaders, "In the final analysis, it is for the people of Asia to run the affairs of Asia, solve the problems of Asia, and uphold the security of Asia." Whilst Chinese leaders recognize the role the US has played since World War II as the guardian of regional stability and security, they now want America to leave. Much as Britain's role in the Western Hemisphere faded at the beginning of the 20th century, so must America's role in Asia. The attempt to persuade the United States to accept the new reality has recently become most intense in the South China Sea. Welcome to KJ Vids and Episode 4 of The Rise of China. In this episode, you will learn more about the Sino-American conflict in the South China Sea. But before we get into it, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel in order to stay notified of our latest videos. The South China Sea Showdown. The South China Sea is an area approximately the size of the Caribbean and bordered by China, Taiwan, and 6 nations of Southeast Asia. The sea includes several hundred islands, reefs, and other features, many of which are underwater at high tide. During the mid-20th century, while China was focused internally, other nations claimed islands in the South China Sea and engaged in construction projects there. In 1956, for example, Taiwan occupied Ituaba, the largest feature in the Spratly Islands, and garrisoned hundreds of troops there. In September 1973, South Vietnam formally annexed tens of the Spratly Islands and deployed hundreds of troops to them to defend its claim. Fearful that its interests were being trampled by its neighbours, in 1974, China seized control of the islands closest to its border from Vietnam. In 2012, China took control of Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines. Since then, it has enlarged its claims, asserting exclusive ownership of the entire South China Sea and redefining the area by redrawing the map with a 9-dash line that encompasses 90% of the territory. If accepted by others, its neighbouring countries have observed that this would create a South China Lake. China has also undertaken major construction projects on features throughout the sea, building outposts on 7 different features in the Spratly Islands. By June 2015, China had reclaimed more than 2,900 acres of land, compared to Vietnam's 80, Malaysia's 70, and the Philippines' 14. As part of its efforts, China has built ports, airstrips, radar facilities, lighthouses, and support buildings, all of which expand the reach of its ships and military aircraft and allow Beijing to blanket the region with radar and surveillance assets. A message for America: butt out. The Pentagon has no doubt about what is driving this undertaking. China's latest land reclamation and construction will also allow it to berth deeper draft ships at outposts, expand its law enforcement and naval presence farther south into the South China Sea, and potentially operate aircraft, possibly as a divert airstrip for carrier-based aircraft, that could enable China to conduct sustained operations with aircraft carriers in the area. China's longer-term objective is also clear. For decades, it has chafed at the operation of US spy ships in waters adjacent to its borders. China asserts that under the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea, the United States must request permission for these ships to operate in China's exclusive economic zone, which extends 200 nautical miles from China's shores, a claim the US flatly rejects. Nonetheless, the construction of radar facilities on features in the South China Sea, as well as airstrips and ports, will make it easier for China to track and harass US ships conducting surveillance. The ability to project power in the area will also give China greater influence over the $5.3 trillion in trade that passes through the South China Sea every year. As it slowly muscles the United States out of these waters, China is also absorbing the nations of Southeast Asia into its economic orbit and pulling in Japan and Australia as well. It has so far succeeded without a fight, but if fight it must, Xi intends to win. The strong army dream. Despite all the other challenges on his agenda, Xi is also simultaneously reorganizing and rebuilding China's armed forces. Russia's foremost expert on the Chinese military, Andrei Kokoshin, calls it unprecedented in scale and depth. The question many have asked is, why now? Such a major reorganization is disenfranchising hundreds of influential generals who have built personal fiefdoms, carrying significant political risk for Xi. And the sight of thousands of uniformed soldiers protesting unemployment and pension cuts, which occurred in October 2016, is not one any Chinese leader wants to see. But Xi has judged it necessary to ensure the military's unquestioned loyalty to the party, and specifically to its leader. Expecting that his other far-reaching initiatives will encounter resistance, he needs to know he can count on those who hold the guns from which political power grows. As China scholar William Kirby has pointed out, the military has played a decisive role at every major turning point in modern Chinese political history. Xi's goal is a military command structure that exerts effective control over the armed forces of the party. He wants commanders who will unswervingly adhere to the party's absolute leadership, and specifically to its commander-in-chief. In the tumult of the anti-corruption campaign and subsequent reorganization of the top military brass, he has carefully picked loyal officers who he trusts will stand with him come what may. Xi also believes that a military that is able to fight and win wars is essential to realizing every other component of the China dream. To achieve the great revival of the Chinese nation, he has argued, we must ensure there is unison between a prosperous country and strong military. While all great powers build strong militaries, the strong army dream is especially important to China as it seeks to overcome its humiliation at the hands of foreign powers. Spotlighting corruption as an existential threat to the military, Xi has taken bold steps to crack down on rampant graft, which has included the outright buying of rank. Under that banner, Xi has made the historic and previously autonomous power centers in the People's Liberation Army once again fully accountable to the party. He eliminated the military's 4 general departments, which under Hu Jintao grew dangerously independent and notoriously corrupt. The overhaul reorganized the general departments into 15 separate bodies that all report directly to the Central Military Commission, the chairman of which is again Xi Jinping. Such bureaucratic reshuffling is not usually a portentous event, but in Xi's case, it underscores Beijing's deadly serious commitment to building a modern military that can take on and defeat all adversaries, in particular the United States. While Chinese military planners are not forecasting war, the war for which they are preparing pits China against the US at sea. The powers that dominated China during the century of humiliation all relied on naval supremacy to do so. As one Chinese analyst warns, ignoring the oceans is a historical error we committed, and now even in the future, we pay a price for this error. No more humiliation. Xi is determined to not make the same mistake, strengthening the naval, air and missile forces of the PLA, crucial to controlling the seas, while cutting 300,000 army troops and reducing the ground forces' traditional dominance within the military. Chinese military strategists, meanwhile, are preparing for maritime conflict with a forward defense strategy based on controlling the seas near China within the first island chain, which runs from Japan through Taiwan to the Philippines and the South China Sea. US Naval War College professors James Holmes and Toshi Yoshihara note that, like the German Kaiser and Theodore Roosevelt before them, the Mahanian conceit that national greatness derives from sea power beguiles many Chinese strategists. We should therefore expect China to attach extraordinary value to fighting and winning in the waters that fall within the near seas, they conclude. Today, China's arsenal of more than 1,000 anti-ship missiles based on the mainland and its coastal fleet make it impossible for any US warship to approach safely within 1,000 miles of China's coast. 62 submarines patrol adjacent waters armed with torpedoes and missiles that can attack surface ships. An array of anti-satellite weapons gives China the capacity to jam or even destroy US intelligence, surveillance, and communication satellites over this area. Together, these capabilities have degraded the position of Pacific military dominance to which the US had become accustomed since the Battle of Midway in 1942. No longer does the United States have uncontested control of the sea and air along the 1,000-mile-wide corridor of ocean bordering China. Exploiting asymmetric advantages, China has capitalized on a geographic proximity to the battlefield, which provides, as one naval planner notes, a landmass equivalent of 1 million aircraft carriers. With an arsenal of million-dollar missiles, it can attack and sink multi-billion-dollar carriers. The authoritative 2015 RAND study, the US-China Military Scorecard, found that by 2017, China will have an advantage or approximate parity in 6 of the 9 areas of conventional capability that are critical in a showdown over Taiwan, and 4 of 9 in a South China Sea conflict. It concludes that over the next 5 to 15 years, Asia will witness a progressively receding frontier of US dominance. This will pose for the US the prospect of a conventional conflict it could actually lose. Of course, just because China wants to be able to fight and win does not mean that it wants to fight. Clearly, it does not. But as it pursues its objectives, its rivalry with the US will undoubtedly exacerbate. Thanks for watching another KJ vid. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as well as like and share the video. We would also love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Finally, KJ Vids is a fully independent media company. In order to produce more mini documentaries on history and geopolitics, we need your support. You can help by becoming a KJ Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Please visit our Patreon page for more information. That's all for now. See you next time.